If you're working hard but still not moving forward, this is for you. Most people think they're stuck because they're not doing enough. That's not true. The real problem is how their mind was trained to think about money. From the start, they're taught to follow rules, wait their turn, and hope effort will be noticed. But money doesn't work that way. Most people don't lose money because they make bad decisions. They lose it because their decisions are being quietly shaped by emotions they never question. By the time they notice the pattern, years have already passed, and their position hasn't changed. But that feeling is already your first disadvantage. Money reacts to positioning, not intention. It moves toward those who control outcomes, not those who merely hope effort will be noticed. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries before stock markets existed. People don't move according to ideals. They move according to incentives, fear, and advantage. Today, money is simply the scoreboard of how well you understand and use those forces. If you ignore that, you'll spend your life optimizing your budget while someone else quietly designs the terms you live under. The cruel part? The game isn't hidden, it's just uncomfortable to look at. Because once you see that wealth follows Machiavellian psychology, not moral effort, you can no longer tell yourself that working harder alone will save you. The uncomfortable truth is this: most people will never be wealthy, not because they are stupid or lazy, but because their minds are programmed for dependence. And dependence is exactly what the system needs to survive. From an early age, most people are trained to associate money with obedience. Stability becomes more important than leverage, and approval slowly replaces autonomy as the goal. And whatever you need controls you. This is why entire lives get traded away for incremental raises and fragile job titles. People believe that following the rules will eventually produce security. But money does not reward obedience, it rewards position. It flows to those who understand how human behavior can be shaped, framed, and directed, and who place themselves at the leverage points of that behavior. Machiavelli warned that those who rely on the goodwill of others are already conquered, because goodwill evaporates the moment incentives change. Yet this is how most people relate to money, emotionally, morally, almost romantically, as if the universe is keeping score of effort and will eventually make things fair. It won't. As long as you cling to the idea that wealth is a prize handed to you for hard work, you lock yourself into the role of worker in someone else's design. The stakes are brutal and simple. Either you rewrite your psychology around money, or you spend decades feeding systems you don't own, hoping they remember to pay you just enough to keep you compliant. Here is what almost no one will admit out loud. Money doesn't change you, it exposes you. If you are reckless before you have it, more money just buys louder mistakes. If you are fearful before you have it, more money just gives you more to protect and panic over. If you are addicted to approval before you have it, more money just expands the audience you're trying to impress. Machiavelli would say, fortune simply reveals the character that was already there. And in the modern world, money is one of her sharpest tools. The average person experiences money like weather, something that happens to them. When it comes in, they feel relief. When it goes out, they feel anxiety. When it's uncertain, they feel fear. Their moods, their decisions, even their sense of identity swing with the balance in their account. They are governed by money because money is wired directly into their emotions. The strategist relates to money differently. He studies it the way Machiavelli studied power, as movement, as leverage, as signal. He doesn't obsess over, how much did I earn this month? He asks, where did control shift this month? Who gained dependence on me, and where did I give dependence away? That one question separates survival from advantage. Most people think wealth is about stacking more savings, more income, more assets. But accumulation without control just creates a more fragile, more anxious version of the same person. The more they have, the more they cling. The more they cling, the more predictable their behavior becomes. When your reactions become easy to anticipate, you stop negotiating and start being managed. Machiavelli warned that men are quick to forget danger when times are good. The same is true with money. A small raise, a bonus, a few good months in business, and people relax. They stop watching. They stop positioning. They fall back into emotional spending because they deserve it. Then conditions change, markets tighten, jobs vanish, clients disappear, and suddenly they realize nothing fundamental inside them ever shifted. The numbers changed. The psychology stayed poor. The wealthy understand this, which is why they focus on internal rewiring long before they chase scale. They train themselves to be emotionally neutral, where others are volatile. Detachment here is not apathy, it is control. When money leaves, they don't panic, they analyze. When money arrives, they don't celebrate blindly, they allocate. Where the average person asks, "Can I afford this?" the Machiavellian mind asks, "What position does this put me in? Who gains leverage over me if I say yes? Who becomes more dependent on me if I say no?" That shift might sound subtle, but it redraws your entire life. The mass mind is conditioned to chase comfort, to minimize discomfort, to avoid risk at all costs. But avoiding risk doesn't protect you from danger. It just hands the power of decision to whoever is willing to take risk in your place. In politics, Machiavelli saw that those afraid of exposure never held real power, because power requires stepping into uncertainty while others hesitate. In money, it's the same. Those who insist on feeling safe at every moment end up trading long-term freedom for short-term emotional relief. They cling to secure paychecks, safe careers, familiar spending habits, and in doing so, they quietly give up bargaining power. You can see this dynamic everywhere if you pay attention. In negotiations, the person who speaks least controls the frame. In markets, the person who reacts slowest to panic dictates direction. In everyday business, the person who appears least desperate commands the best terms. Desperation is visible in your voice, your body language, your timing, your purchases, and money punishes desperation ruthlessly. Machiavelli wrote that people respond to appearances, not intentions, and your financial life is no different. If you look needy, you will be priced like you have no alternatives. If you look overly impressed, you will be charged a premium. If you look unsteady, people will test your boundaries. The strategist understands this, which is why he stops advertising struggle, stops explaining himself, and stops turning every financial decision into a public performance. Restraint alters perception. When you stop rushing to explain yourself, others are forced to reveal more than they intended. In money psychology, the first to reveal urgency invites worse terms. The strategist withholds. He lets others rush to fill silence, rush to justify their offers, rush to close the deal. And in that rush, they make mistakes. They reveal their constraints. They give away leverage. The average person spends to relieve tension. A stressful week ends in an impulsive purchase because they earned it. The strategist sees that tension as raw power. Pressure, when held, forces movement in prices, in people, in opportunities. While most can't tolerate the discomfort of waiting, he uses that discomfort as a filter. If an opportunity wilts under the weight of his hesitation, it was never strong enough to build on. This inversion feels unnatural at first, because it violates everything you've been socially trained to do. Open up, be transparent, seek approval, show effort. But Machiavelli's world and your financial reality operate on the same cold principle. The more readable you are, the more easily you can be controlled. So long as money can pull you into fear, shame, or excitement on command, you are not playing the game, you are being played. Most people think the opposite of being poor is being rich, but in a Machiavellian sense, the real divide is between prey and predator, between those whose behavior is constantly being read and harvested, and those who do the reading. Prey run their financial lives on visibility. They want to be seen as doing well, seen as generous, seen as successful. They post upgrades, announce goals, talk openly about what they're working on, believing visibility creates opportunity. Machiavelli would call this a dangerous illusion. Visibility without leverage increases pressure, not opportunity. It gives everyone else a map of your fears, your hopes, your timelines. Once people can predict you, they can price you. The predator, in contrast, understands that unreadability is a form of armor. He reveals enough to be relevant, never enough to be predictable. His lifestyle doesn't advertise his leverage. His social media doesn't betray his constraints. His words don't give away his urgency. He cultivates something most people never even think about: mystique. Not fake mystery for ego, but a deliberate gap between what others think they know and what is actually true. That gap forces people to approach with caution, to offer better terms, to assume strength where there may simply be composure. In deals, in jobs, in partnerships, the prey is eager to prove value. They list achievements, they justify their price, they beg to be chosen. The predator positions value. He arranges things so that access to him is the scarce resource. Instead of chasing roles, he designs skills and assets that others need more than he needs their approval. This is pure Machiavelli. It is much safer to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. In modern terms, it is safer to be respected than liked, safer to be necessary than popular. Money follows necessity. Employers stretch budgets for people they cannot easily replace. Clients accept stricter terms from those they believe they can't do without. Markets eventually bend to those who control scarce insight, scarce capital, scarce distribution. None of that happens by accident. It comes from a ruthless refusal to base your financial identity on how liked or admired you are. People who stay broke often believe they're invisible, but they're not. They're just easy to read. You can predict what they'll buy when they get a bonus, how they'll react in a crisis, how fast they'll fold under pressure. The strategist reverses that script. He becomes hard to rush, hard to corner, hard to tempt with short-term validation. His no becomes more common than his yes. His silence becomes more common than his explanation. From the outside, this can look cold, even arrogant. From the inside, it's simply self-defense in a world where everyone is being scanned for leverage all the time. Machiavelli warned that men who try to satisfy everyone satisfy no one, least of all themselves. The modern translation is simple. As long as you are optimizing for being liked, you cannot optimize for being paid. The day you stop needing to be chosen is the day you can begin to design yourself as unavoidable. The deeper truth Machiavelli forces you to confront is that money itself is neutral. What matters is where you stand in relation to it and to the people who move it. Wealth isn't a reward for constant action or endless grind. It's the side effect of standing in the right place while everyone else runs in circles. In politics, Machiavelli studied how power crystallizes around a prince who understands timing, perception, and fear, three forces that exist whether he acts or not. In money, the same geometry applies. If your psychology is wired to chase every opportunity, to fix every problem personally, to react to every fluctuation, you become a servant of motion. The strategist thinks in alignment instead of effort. Alignment between how others perceive him, how long he's willing to wait, and how much pressure he can tolerate without flinching. When perception, patience, and pressure line up, outcomes start to feel inevitable, not because of fate, but because alternatives quietly disappear. Once you start to see the game this way, something uncomfortable happens. You lose the luxury of blaming the system for everything, and that loss of excuses is exactly what Machiavelli would call dangerous knowledge. Before, you could tell yourself you were broke because your boss is unfair, the economy is bad, life is expensive. Now you can see all the tiny ways you leak power every day, and that visibility makes you responsible. The psychology of making money isn't about filling your head with positive affirmations. It's about discipline. The kind of discipline that shows up not in what you do once, but in what you refuse to do repeatedly. Discipline to delay your response instead of firing off an emotional yes. Discipline to sit with uncertainty instead of buying your way out of discomfort. Discipline to observe how others move before you commit to a move of your own. Machiavelli noted that power is rarely lost in dramatic coups. It slips away through small concessions, small compromises, small moments of weakness that seem harmless at the time. Your finances erode the same way. You don't go broke in one bad purchase. You go broke by reacting a little too quickly, accepting a slightly worse deal, staying in a slightly misaligned role 1 year too long because the thought of change makes you anxious. Each time you react instead of respond, you pay a hidden tax. Maybe in money, maybe in time, maybe in credibility. You don't see the bill right away, but it accumulates. This is why people wake up after a decade and feel stuck without being able to point to a single catastrophic mistake. Nothing exploded, they just leaked power in 1,000 tiny drips. The Machiavellian mind treats every reaction like a potential point of surrender and trains against it. You start asking yourself, if I say yes right now, is it because this is strategically right, or because I'm trying to make this discomfort go away? That one question, asked honestly, will save you from more financial damage than any budgeting app ever could. Here's where self-control stops being a self-help cliché and becomes a Machiavellian weapon. Every time you spend impulsively, overshare emotionally, or lock yourself into commitments out of fear, you're not just losing money, you're tightening the cage around yourself. Most people live with zero slack. Their income barely outruns their lifestyle, their schedule is packed, their emotions are on a hair trigger. They call it busy or normal, but Machiavelli would call it exposed. When you have no margin, you can't negotiate, you can only comply. A sudden bill, a market dip, a missed paycheck, and you're desperate. And desperation, as we've already seen, gets punished with bad terms. The wealthy engineer slack on purpose. Not laziness, slack. Space between what they could spend and what they do spend. Space between what they feel and what they express. Space between the options on the table and the decision they actually make. That space is where optionality lives. And optionality is modern power. When you have cash reserves, you don't have to accept the first offer. When your lifestyle doesn't consume every dollar, you can wait for asymmetrical opportunities instead of begging for safe, tiny returns. When your identity isn't attached to being busy or needed, you can say no without feeling like you're disappearing. Machiavelli observed that those who lack resources must submit to those who have them. Today, that resource isn't just money, It's psychological composure. Watch what happens in a downturn, in a layoff wave, in a market crash. Most people panic sell stocks, panic quit strategies, panic take any job or client they can get, because uncertainty feels unbearable. They tell themselves they had no choice, but the truth is, they ran out of slack long before they ran out of options. The Machiavellian strategist, by contrast, sees chaos as a stress test of everyone else's psychology. Downturns don't create his power, they reveal it. While the herd stampedes toward the exit, he's watching who's liquidating out of fear, which assets are being mispriced, which businesses are under pressure and therefore open to favorable terms. He can do this only because he is solvent, financially and emotionally. Solvent means your decisions aren't dictated by today's fear. It means you can endure discomfort long enough to let reality show its hand. Risk, in this frame, stops being something to avoid and becomes something to price. The average person hoards small certainties: a stable job, a predictable paycheck, a comfortable routine. They cling so hard to these that they never pursue the rare, lopsided bets where a small, calculated risk can transform their position completely. They're proud of playing it safe, but Machiavelli would recognize what's really happening. They are keeping themselves perfectly predictable and perfectly controllable. The strategist flips this. He protects his downside by building buffers, not by shrinking his life to the smallest possible version. He accepts that some experiments will fail, some deals will fall through, some investments will go sideways. But he structures his world so those losses become tuition, not execution. You'll notice a pattern here. Poor psychology trades long-term leverage for short-term comfort. Rich psychology trades short-term comfort for long-term leverage. Say yes to every invitation, every subscription, every impulse, and your life will feel full, but your leverage will be empty. Say no more often than you say yes, and for a while your life will feel smaller, quieter, less validated. But in that quiet, something powerful begins to grow: the freedom to choose instead of obey. Over time, these choices compound into different realities. One loop runs like this: stress, impulse relief, tighter margins, more stress. The other loop runs: stress, restraint, more slack, better decisions, less stress. Both loops are psychological first, financial second. Machiavelli spent his life studying why some men end up ruled and others end up ruling. Applied to money, the answer is simple and brutal. Those who cannot control themselves will always be controlled by those who can. At a certain point, the question, "How do I make more money?" stops being useful, and this is the point Machiavelli would want you to notice. The real question becomes, where am I leaking power? In my reactions, in my need for approval, in my fear of saying no. Because once you plug those leaks, money stops being something you chase and starts being something that has fewer and fewer places to escape from you. When you start hunting for those leaks, you discover most of them exist not in your bank account, but in your habits, your systems, and the way you let other people read you. This is where the Machiavellian approach to money becomes operational, not theoretical. Watch how most people behave the moment things start going slightly well. They announce new projects, brag about wins, loosen boundaries, take on too many commitments, and start giving more of themselves away in the name of generosity or momentum. They post their goals, reveal their income, share every new deal to inspire others, without realizing they're handing the world a blueprint of their leverage points. Machiavelli warned that visibility without defense is invitation, and in modern money terms, that means if you show the world exactly where you are overextended, underinformed, or emotionally attached. Someone will design a product, a contract, or a pitch to extract value from that exact spot. The strategist moves differently. He relies less on trust and vibes and more on structure. Where most people build relationships on promises and goodwill, he builds systems, contracts, and processes that don't rely on anyone's mood to function. Not because he's paranoid, but because he understands what Machiavelli knew about human nature. Gratitude fades, incentives don't. People may like you today, but they will always follow their interests tomorrow. So he designs his agreements so that when others pursue their own advantage, they drag his interests forward along with them. That might mean equity instead of a one-time fee, performance-based pay instead of flattery-based opportunities, or written terms instead of casual favors. It also means he controls his exposure. Financial transparency without leverage is just self-sabotage. When you tell everyone exactly how much you make, how much you owe, what you're desperate to achieve this year, you're not being authentic. You're giving the world data it can use to lowball you, guilt you, or pressure you. Machiavelli would call that making yourself too easy to read. The strategist becomes selectively opaque. He reveals enough competence to attract opportunities, but never enough vulnerability to lose negotiation power. When asked about his plans, he stays vague. When asked about his limits, he smiles and changes the subject. When others rush to explain their constraints, their deadlines, their fears, he simply listens and takes mental notes. Memory, in this game, is a weapon. He remembers who panics in downturns, who overpromises under stress, who accepts any terms when cash is tight. Over time, this map of human behavior becomes more valuable than any spreadsheet. It tells him who to partner with, who to avoid, when to push, and when to walk away. While everyone else is busy being relatable and liked, he is quietly becoming unreadable and necessary. Loyalty, he knows, is temporary. Structure is permanent. So he puts less energy into making sure people feel good about him and more into ensuring the systems around him keep sending him opportunities, whether people feel good or not. Direct debits, retainers, ownership stakes, automated funnels, documented processes. These are the modern equivalents of Machiavelli's fortresses and alliances. They keep value flowing even when sentiment turns. From the outside, this can look cold, even manipulative, but from the inside, it feels like sanity. No more begging for fairness, no more hoping people do the right thing, no more leaking power every time you trust a handshake over a contract. The irony is that once your world runs on systems instead of emotional promises, you actually become freer to be kind and generous, because your survival no longer depends on whether other people behave perfectly. You can afford to be decent without being naive. That is a level of calm most people will never know, not because they couldn't achieve it, but because they'd rather be understood than protected, visible than powerful. Machiavelli would be unsurprised. He spent his life watching rulers lose everything because they confused love with stability. In your case, the stakes are your financial life, not a kingdom, but the principle is identical. If your money, your career, your business rely on everyone liking you and no one ever acting in their own interest, you are already overthrown. You just haven't felt it yet. This is where the common fantasy about hustle dies. If Machiavelli were watching your life, he wouldn't ask how many hours you grind. He'd ask how many of those hours actually move leverage in your favor. Most people treat money like a treadmill: run faster, sweat more, show everyone how hard you're trying, then wonder why they stay in the same place. The Machiavellian shift is brutal in its simplicity. Wealth is not engineered through constant action, but through selective restraint. Knowing which deals not to take, which clients not to chase, which arguments not to join, which purchases not to make. Every no is a tiny act of self-preservation, a refusal to be pulled into someone else's urgency. Over time, those refusals carve out something rare: the ability to choose instead of scramble. You stop begging for opportunities and start filtering them. You stop needing every paycheck to feel safe and start using paychecks to buy more autonomy. Hustle culture worships exhaustion as proof of worth. Machiavellian money psychology worships control over your time, your reactions, your environment. You are no longer measuring your life by how busy you are, but by how replaceable you've become. The less replaceable you are, the quieter your work becomes, because real leverage doesn't need to shout. From the outside, it looks like you're doing less. From the inside, you know you're finally in a position where money has to negotiate with you, not the other way around. At this point, the story you've been told about money collapses into something far simpler and far less comforting. Money is not a cosmic prize for good behavior. It's a consequence of how you position yourself inside human psychology. Machiavelli spent his life stripping rulers of their illusions. Now you've stripped yourself of yours. You can no longer pretend it's just about luck or talent or how nice the world decides to be. You've seen how predictability gets harvested, how desperation gets punished, how visibility without leverage turns you into a target. You've seen how restraint compounds, how slack creates optionality, how unreadability forces better terms, how systems quietly outlive feelings. You understand now why some people rise with what looks like ease, while others grind themselves into dust and go nowhere. They're not playing harder, they're playing a different game. And here is the part Machiavelli would insist on. Knowing all of this changes nothing unless you change your behavior. You can file this away as an interesting perspective and return to reacting, oversharing, hustling for approval, or you can start moving differently. Fewer explanations, slower reactions, sharper no's, more structure, less hope. Insight alone doesn't change outcomes, only repeated behavioral shifts do, and most people abandon those the moment discomfort appears.